Hi, welcome to the Profitable Kitchen. Today I want to talk about interview skills and how to interview to get the best possible restaurant staff, predominantly for front of house in this video, for your business. I've been interviewing people since the 1990s for restaurant roles, so I've been doing it a while now. I've had plenty of experience, and over the years I've developed my own questions and strategies to try and get the best people possible for my business. So whether you're a manager starting out and you've never interviewed somebody before, where you have your own business and you're just looking for ideas for new questions, hopefully this video can bring some value to you. Because when you hire people for your restaurant, takeaway, or whatever type of hospitality business it is, hotel for example, you want people who are passionate and are not just looking for a paycheck each day. So it's important that you get the right people. You want people who are outgoing, can talk to the customers confidently, can sell, and can work hard for you and have a positive attitude. I've broken the interview down into 6 stages. Stage 1 would be the introduction and previous experience. Stage 2 would be cross-examination on the previous experience. Stage 3 will be the personality questions. Stage 4 will be to tell them about the role that you have for them. Stage 5 will be the formal questions you have to go through. And stage 6 will be their questions for you. So how I like to start an interview is I'll say to the prospective employee that if you'd just like to start by telling me a bit about yourself, and then once you've done that, I'll tell you a bit about the role. So therefore, you're kind of giving them an outline of what's going to happen and what's expected. So they're going to tell you a story, then you're going to tell them a story, and then the interview can hopefully flow from there. So once they start telling you about their previous experience and talking, this is the first time you're really getting to analyse them properly, how they handle themselves, how confident they are, how that's going to reflect when they're talking to customers, and how they seem to be able to control the conversation. At this point, there might be lots of variable questions that you'll be able to ask depending on what they say to you and depending on the experience they have, the jobs that they've done, the different kind of work that they might have entailed in the past, and how that's going to be relevant to the role that you have on offer. So there could be many different questions come up with that. Out with that, you could be asking things like what was your start finish times, so you kind of get a rough idea of what their shift patterns were previously. Tell me what a typical day was like, so you can see like from start to finish what they did during the day, and how that would be relevant to what you're doing or you're offering them. How long were they there for, and make sure that matches up with their CV and what they said as well, and what made them decide to leave, or if they're still employed, why do they want to leave. This can be a tricky one because sometimes people don't want to disclose why they left or why they want to leave, because they want to tell you what you want to hear rather than the truth sometimes. And it's not a negative reflection on them, it's just nature that they'll want to try and do their best in the interview and tell you what you want to hear. So they're thinking about what would you like to know, so how would you like it to be perceived. So they'll maybe try and hide the fact that they had a fight with the manager and left or whatever, whereas we know that in an interview situation we'd like to know the truth so that we can get the best analysis on the candidate. Pry a little bit into that, sometimes a bit more, depending on the answer and how comfortable they were answering that question. Another good question to ask is, at what point were they no longer happy going to work each day? So there, it's quite a leading question, but if they could be, because they could be really happy, still really happy going to work each day, they might not have reached that point where they're not happy getting up and going to work every day yet. But the point is that they're sitting in front of you for a reason, and it's to improve their situation. But if it is the fact that they're unhappy, then you'll get a better, clearer picture of what that point was that made them unhappy. And maybe the same thing's going on in your business, so maybe it wouldn't be the right person for the role if they can't handle the situation, if it's the same situation that they're going to have to deal with in their next role. So now we're on to stage 3 of the interview process, which is the personality questions. And at this point, you want to be asking questions to get to know the person a little bit better and how they're going to be able to deal with certain situations as they arise within your business. So at this point, with the questions and the way I ask them, I'm looking for them to tell me a story of some actual event that happened to them in relation to the question that I've asked. I don't want that, oh, I would do this or I would do that. That's not what I want. That's not what I'm looking for. I want them to tell me a story. And if I'm not getting that from them, I'll ask them to tell me a story. And I'll just say it bluntly as that. Just please tell me a story. Tell me something that's happened to you like this. Because sometimes they can't think of anything. And it can be the pressures of the interview as well. But, you know, just give them a bit of time and ask them if they can try and remember a time where this maybe happened to them. So I'll go through the questions that I ask. So the first one I would be asking is, tell me about a difficult shift you've had to work. So this would be to show a test of resilience, to see how tough they are. And in hospitality, as we know, it's long hours, and sometimes it can be, you know, 24-hour shifts nearly. So you want to see what the most they've done or what they consider to be a difficult shift. And that should give you a good picture about resilience. Next question is a sort of follow-up on that. Tell me about a long day you had to work, so a long shift. So then you can see what they consider to be a long shift. They said, oh, I had to work 8 hours one day on my feet without a break. So it gives you a picture about what they consider to be a long day. The next question would be, tell me about the most stressful situation you've been in at work. So hopefully this can again paint a picture of what they consider to be a stressful situation, and then hopefully you'll get a clear picture as to how they managed to resolve it, or if they did resolve it. And then give me an example of a difficult customer you've had to deal with. And then again, you're getting an actual story about a customer complaint and how they dealt with it. Follow-up questions I might kind of add on as a side question for that, depending on how it goes. If I wanted to go a bit deeper, I might give them, or if they were struggling particularly with that question, I might say something like, well, if a customer came in and asked for a sandwich to be cut in half, and one half had this filling and one half had different filling, what would you say? Would you do it? And see what the answer would be, or see if they say, oh, well, it's not on the menu, we can't do it, or I'd speak to the chef, and if I didn't know the answer, I would ask the chef or the manager, whatever. But anyway, you get the point. So it gives you a kind of clue as to how far, if they're willing to go the extra mile for the customer, I suppose, on top of how they actually dealt with a difficult customer as well. So yeah, that's an extra question. And then I would ask, give me an example of a bad experience you've had as a customer. So this question is good because it shows you where their standards are. And it doesn't have to be in a hospitality business. It could be anywhere. It could be on a train or a mobile phone shop or anything. So the customer experience, they've received bad customer experience and how that affected them, how they felt, and what they would have done differently. So it gives you, again, I've asked that many times, obviously, and sometimes I get the answer, I've never really had a bad experience, and I think, well, you're very lucky if you've never had a bad customer experience. So, you know, it shows me that they don't hold high standards. So how are they going to be able to empathize with the customer? The next question I'd ask is, give me an example of a difficult colleague you've had to work with. So this is quite a good one because it kind of gets them into a story mode. Sometimes there can be emotion involved in it. Sometimes you get a really good story as well out of it. Because if there's been a problem with a member of staff, you kind of get to know how they deal with the conflict, and again what irritates them, and where their sort of resilience levels are, and what was it the crux of the argument, or what was the problem. So yeah, there are many good things that can come out of that question, and it's quite an important one. And the last question I like to throw in is, tell me about yourself but nothing to do with work. Because a lot of times when they come to the interview, they've geared themselves up to talk about themselves in a work environment, and how hard they can work, and how much of an asset they're going to be for you, but they haven't really thought about themselves and how to talk about themselves. So it can sometimes throw them a bit, but if they're really struggling with that one, you can ask them if they've got any hobbies and sort of try and lead into it a little bit. But other than that, it gives you a good idea of what they do in their spare time, and it can also tell you if they've got family, if they have children. You can get a better picture of their home life and what they get up to when they're not at work. So that then brings you on to stage 4, where you tell them a bit about the role that you have for them. So the best way I could say to describe the role to them, the prospective candidate, is say it with no frills and tell them exactly what it's going to be like, and paint the clearest picture you can of how hard it's going to be, what challenges they might face, what an actual shift's going to look like. And don't paint no matter how desperate you are for staff, don't paint a picture that it's all sunshine and rainbows when it's not, because it's happened to me before, where in the past, when I was a teenager and I went to a job interview and they told me how amazing it was going to be, and every day I counted up a new lie that the manager had told me at the interview for about a month, and I just resented the management at that point. So I was only 17 at the time, but I still remember it, and it kind of got to me. So I always feel that the best policy is honesty, and the best way to get the best candidate is to tell them exactly what the role's going to be like, all the good points and all the bad points, in a sort of strategical way. But obviously you want to make sure that they're going to be able to handle all the situations that might come up, if they're going to have to work on their own, for example. How hard does it get when the place is at its peak levels of busyness, and how stressful it can get. So yeah, as I say, no frills, just tell them as it is. And then stage 5 would be formal questions from it. So things like, do you have any restrictions to days you can work, times you can work? For example, do you have any other commitments that we need to know about before we start? Do you need every Tuesday night off to go to dance class, or whatever it is? Do you have any holidays booked? That's another one. So you don't want them to start next week and you've hired them, and then they say, oh, by the way, I've got 3 weeks booked for in July for whatever reason. So do you have any medical conditions that would stop you performing any duties in a restaurant or wherever your place is? And then you get to know if there are things that you might need to make allowances for. And do you have any commuting issues? For example, if it's a late finish, are they going to be able to get a bus home? Or is it the close isn't finished, but it's like, oh, I need to go for my bus now, see you later, and that kind of thing. So I would definitely try and press that, because that's happened to me on many occasions where people have told me at the interview, no problem, I can, and again, they say they tell you what you want to hear sometimes. So yeah, I can commute, it's no problem at all. And then it gets to 9:30 and it's like, oh, I need to go for my bus. So things like that. Or you might have policies in place in your business to counter that kind of thing anyway. But yeah, it's definitely a question I would ask. And then stage 6 would be their questions. So do they have any questions for you? So hopefully by explaining the role to them, telling them all about the shift patterns, the uniform, the start time, the finish time, everything that they would maybe need to know. Is as I say, the no frills version of the role involved. By the time it gets to the point where you're asking them, do they have any more questions for you, then you can say, they hopefully will say to you, no, I think we've covered everything. And at that point then you conclude the interview, say thanks very much to them, and we'll let you know if you've been successful in due course. So hopefully that's given you some value. Everybody's got their own style of interview. Maybe you've got a different style. Maybe you've got different questions that you like to ask. I've found this to be the most successful for me over the years, and I've perfected it, and I've found it's helped me get the best staff possible for my business. Obviously you have variables where people will interview really, really well, and then they'll start and they'll not be very good at all, and you'll have to get rid of them. There's a bit of a lottery there sometimes, but overall, if you go through this style of interview, it does cover a lot of the bases, it does cover a lot of the variables, and hopefully you get a clear picture of who the person is and how they're going to be within your business and hopefully be an asset to you. Because if you don't do the interview process properly, if you are desperate and you just get people in, it can lead to a high turnover and really increased costs in your business when you have to keep rehiring and taking time out to interview, paying money to advertise, and then paying staff to train them and get up to speed as well. And then obviously going through that process several times can be costly. So yeah, the interview process is really important to go through, and as I say, hopefully this video has brought you value. So if you could like and subscribe, I would appreciate it. It would help my channel greatly. As I say, I have a free community that I've just launched, and the link's in the bio for that. If you click on that, then I'm doing one-to-one sessions for free to help people achieve their goals and help them with any issues that they might be having in their journey at the moment. So as I say, it's a totally free community. Just want to help people and share my knowledge. So thanks very much for watching the video, and we'll see you on the next one.